the word of the day that I'd like to work with is a case study on hubris. And what is hubris? Hubris is getting your ego wrapped around your intelligence. You know something, you know you're smart enough about it, and you're not listening to warnings, and you push forward. That is called hubris. And hubris can get people killed. I'm not going to go over the details of it. We've all heard about what happened to those 5 precious people that were on board the Titan sub that was going down. Now, this is commercial tourism. Yeah, they were scientists, but they're paying $200,000 for a commercial tour down to the Titanic. But you're also going into a very hostile environment. It's incredibly cold. The pressures are incredibly great. Communications to the mothership is difficult but important, and yet you're charging people for this. So you have to factor all those things in and have them figured out. And we now know what happened. They went down there, and under these extreme pressures, the sub imploded. And if you saw any of the things on the news reports about what happens when it implodes, those people didn't feel a thing. They probably even didn't know it happened, because you're talking about 6,000 to 8,000 pounds per square inch. The human body is basically terrible. Just don't even think about it, but it's over fast. And there's no time to register the fear. And why did this happen? I want to talk a little bit about hubris. So hubris, I'm going to talk about OCEANGATE. Now I'm repeating myself. We're going to talk about OCEANGATE. I'm also going to talk about a company called de Havilland, and I'm going to talk about Boeing and how hubris got people killed. In this case, the center part of the sub is made out of carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is amazing. If you go look at any Ferrari or Lamborghini, the brand new ones sitting out there, you can see carbon fiber components. They're super strong and super lightweight. But they're not infinitely strong, and they're not infinitely, applicable to everything. And there were folks that were saying, and among them, a guy named James Cameron, who you may know him as a producer-director of Avatar, producer-director of Titanic, but he has also spent a huge chunk of his life becoming a dead, cold expert on underwater exploration. And he's actually been down to the Titanic wreck, I think the number is 33 times. But he says, I only go with certain organizations, and I only go on certain equipment. And Japanese companies have made phenomenal equipment with amazing levels of testing, because this is a hostile environment. It's really cold, and the pressures out there are extreme, just absolutely extreme. Well, people were saying that the center part of that Titan sub, and we've all seen the pictures, a little white sub with a little sharp tail, and then the front, which was titanium with that portal, the window. The center part there that was built of carbon fiber, there's a lot of people that are experts in underwater exploration that said, this guy was a little cocky and a little sure of himself, because people kept asking about testing. And they kept asking about validation. You can do testing and validation unmanned of a progressive level underwater to test and prove out the capability of new designs to go into the deeps of our ocean for very interesting and good scientific reasons. In this case, that carbon fiber center shell was the problem. It ultimately imploded, and the experts, we haven't seen pictures, but we've heard comments from the U.S. Coast Guard and the other people who were down there and found what they said were 5 major pieces of this, including the front nose cone, the metal front that has the portal on it is made out of titanium, as we've been told. He said this thing compressed in a millisecond. We're talking millisecond. And it compressed, and the tail and the nose cone would have come together, and that's that. But people were saying, you didn't really test this. You need to test this. If you know your history, going back in 1963, I believe it was, 62, 63, when John F. Kennedy was president, the United States was in an arms war against what was then called the USSR. United Soviet Socialist Republics, I think it's called. But that's back before they were all broke out into Russia, Belarus, Georgia, and all the stands, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and all that. And at that time, they were in this arms race. And a submarine called the Thresher was built by the U.S. Navy. And a lot of subs are built in a place called Groton, Connecticut. And there's a company there called the Electric Boat Company. There's a lot of defense industry, specifically in submarine warfare there. And they went out way off Cape Cod where there's deep water, where the shelf drops down, drops down, drops down underwater, so they can go really deep. And they were going down at progressive depths to test the worthiness of the Thresher. Now the Thresher had been down for many tests, up, down, but now they were going progressively deeper. And they reached down there to a point where they ran into some trouble. They were trying to get to surface and they couldn't, and they began to gradually sink further, and they got to what was called crush depth, where the pressure of the ocean is greater than the submarine's design, and it imploded, and we lost 150 people, including submarine designers. So this has been going on for a long time. Why do I say that? That's 1962. We're 60 years from that, so we've had a lot of knowledge. And there were people that knew what they were doing that said OceanGate did not do what they felt was appropriate testing, because they went down and it worked a couple times. Hey, it worked. We went down. My understanding is this is Mission 5. These people died on commercial Mission 5. And there was 4 or 5 missions in advance where they took oceanographers. I think there was somebody, a producer from Discovery Channel, but there's a list of people. But all those people on those tests said the same thing. Not every single one of them, but I think the majority of them said, hey, when we went down there, we lost communication. Oh, so maybe the radio systems or the systems for communicating underwater weren't perfect yet. Yeah, they said that they really needed to conserve batteries, so they would turn off all lights except the computer, and they would break these glow sticks, little green glow sticks, like you maybe give your kid at Halloween, walking around with them, to be seen for cars at night. Those. And they had that, and they said, wouldn't you think they built in enough battery power to do the things they do here? So there was that. People also said that the CEO Stockton Rush was piloting once, and he said, oh, I have to reboot these computers. You're on your way down. You're way underwater, dude. And he rebooted the computers that were there. So it's like, why is that happening? So there's like check, 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 check. A lot of people were saying, it made me a little bit nervous going down there. Now, why would they be taking producers from networks and other people down there? That is the job, I'm just describing, of them to be doing the testing with their own people. Then you do, which sometimes in software you'd call it alphas. Then you get to beta and you invite some people in order to be part of beta tests, and finally you do commercial release. The discipline of making software is no different than the discipline of designing this sub, except the procedures and the consequences are a hell of a lot different when you start putting people in it. And so everything I've read, I believe CEO Stockton Rush was full of hubris. He wanted to get going. He was out there raising money. One of these people said he came to their home and he had pitched them. It was a couple that said, we don't want to go, and they did not go on this trip, number 5, and now said they sit back with this kind of surreal feeling that, wow, that could have been us. And so you also have, the progressive nature of it. Okay, Biz Doc, what do you mean by progressive? Well, testing things that fly, that are launched like rockets, or that go into the depths, there are a lot of pressure changes and incredible engineering stresses that come on those things, whether it's a rocket, an airplane, or an underwater sub, that require a whole different set of analysis and testing. And what was interesting here is clearly James Cameron and others were saying that Stockton Rush rushed it. And so they say in his hubris, he got himself killed and 4 other people, and it's a tragedy.